Thank you. So I hope you found this morning's sessions as enjoyable as I did. And I was so thrilled to hear Ryan talk about Cerner's focus on really transforming the patient engagement. And I think it's a very timely opportunity to have this conversation because, as he pointed out, with so many wearables out there and with new Alexa use cases all the time, the customer experience is really getting ahead of us. So today I'm going to take you through examples of that and also new AWS offerings to help you get in front of that as well. So with that, let me start talking about where we are with customer engagement today. And I think it's really interesting. I was at a conference a couple of months ago, and I first heard about the notion of the fourth industrial revolution. And I did some research, and I found that it was first coined by a gentleman by the name of Klaus Schwab at Davos in 2016. And he used it to define how customer engagements were really changing in a world where the third industrial revolution was around automation, so automating banking, for example. The fourth industrial revolution was about adding artificial intelligence and machine learning, plus Internet of Things, to be able to unleash whole new capabilities that we never thought possible. And connected cars and driverless cars are a really good example of how AI, ML plus IoT transforms how we think about driving. And then I've been having conversations with a lot of other people in the field, people who are scientists and even philosophers. And they say what's really happening is that we're creating what's called an emergent system. An emergent system is one where 1 + 1 = 3. A very simple idea, a bicycle and a rider. Until you put them together, you don't get that smooth forward motion. Another aspect of emergent systems is they're leaderless. So ant colonies. The members of the colony behave independently, but all working toward the same outcome, orchestrated seamlessly and soundlessly to a certain extent. And it's really characterized by pulling together not just AI, ML, and IoT, but also bots. And these could be things like chatbots or even robotics. And I think that one of the most beautiful examples of an emergent system is a snowflake, because that's when water and atmospheric pressure come together to form these amazingly complex and beautiful fractal designs. And as you see, as we talk about what customer experience means for people today, I think the snowflake's a really wonderful metaphor for that, because each of us is now having different experiences with companies, whether we realize it or not. And if we take a step back and we look at companies who have been leading disruption with emergent type systems in this fourth industrial revolution, there are a couple of implications for what they're doing. The first is our relationship with many of these brands is highly unique. My husband has a doggy daycare. This week, I accidentally logged into his Netflix account, and I was really surprised to see a lot of documentaries about wolves and dogs. Not something I normally look at, but it was pretty cool. I was glad it was wolves and dogs. The other implication of the fourth industrial revolution is we're bringing things to the home. And even the person is the place in many examples. So Warby Parker and Stitch Fix are two great examples of transforming how we buy prescription glasses, how we shop for clothes. You don't even need to know necessarily what looks good on you. You've got people who will figure it out, and it's low risk. And all of that shopping experience we used to go out for is really coming to the home. The third implication of this fourth industrial revolution is they're creating brand new fields of research. And I'm so excited by the work that John Deere is doing, where they've incorporated sensors and telematics, and they've connected tractors to the cloud and to GPS. And why this is cool is not only are they self-driving, but they're able to triangulate with GPS to get far more precise geographic location to the sub-inch, which means those tractors can turn a lot more tightly than they could before, and they can plant their seed crops closer together, so they will naturally then increase their crop yields. But the other thing they can do is, while they're doing all this, is all these sensors are capturing the environment, the moisture, the soil conditions, the sun, and that is going to a whole supply chain of partners responsible for our food chain. One of those are people that make seeds, seed varietals. So not only can these people recommend the right seeds, but they're also taking that data and inventing new seeds and doing new research based on these new environments they never had access before. So it is really almost magical in terms of what's happening with these emergent systems in this fourth industrial revolution. And then a result of that is all of this has changed how we view customer experiences. So I started in life sciences in 2000, and I joined because I had worked at companies like AT&T and Prudential Financial, and Pharmacia was really interested in transforming how they engage with patients. So I got to build one of the first patient relationship marketing capabilities. Pfizer bought us, I expanded it. Then I went to Novartis and helped to create multi-channel marketing for physicians. But now, as we look at the tools that delighted us a couple of years ago, for example, the ability to send out millions of emails to people, well, today we call that spam, right? It's got to be personalized. We are now used to that experience through these companies. In the past, I thought it was super cool to have like the best website experience. That's not so much important anymore. Now it has to be connected experiences, and not just with your screens, but with your retail, or increasingly even in your car. In the past, we made really beautiful mobile interfaces. For example, with my Philips Hue, being able to set up my lights. But now I just walk into my home and I say, Alexa, turn the bedroom lights on. And then we also got used to doing some cool things like paying our bills online, right? It's great, I can pay all my electric bills online. But now the bar is raised, and now I know, how do I compare to my neighbors? Am I energy efficient? That relationship with them has gotten a lot more valuable because they're helping me contribute to a higher order goal. So as we look at all of these different types of experiences, the wonderful news is they're coming to healthcare. And for those of you who ZocDoc for the past couple of years, you know how much it's transformed the process of finding a doctor that not only do you think is right for you, but also takes your insurance too. In the past, we'd have to ask our friends and family, who are you using for a primary care doctor? If you move to a new neighborhood, how do you make sure you've got the right care team for your family? It was a lot of guesswork. That took all the guesswork out of it and took the great experiences we had with things like OpenTable, brought them to that industry, and made the whole process so much more efficient. We have companies like Merck. I'm super excited by this use case. You've read a lot about the problems with getting full series of vaccines completed for children and adults. Well, Merck is deciding to combat this problem by bringing it to the home. So they partner with UPS. They're going to have nurses bring the vaccines to the home and administer it to the families. That's really important because if you are a working mom or dad with children at home, it's super hard to make sure you're bringing them in for that whole schedule. And then if you have parents you're taking care of, they need to have their own set too. So now we're bringing healthcare into the home in a way that's really meaningful and impactful in solving a customer problem. Telemedicine. We have been really concerned about the lack of primary care doctors and the ability of patients to get access to doctors when they need them. And certainly we have so many wonderful telemedicine partners on AWS. Babylon and 98.6 are two that are really focusing on this idea of almost like a Netflix model for primary care, right? Can we have subscription models so that patients can have access to a great primary care team all year long? Now, this isn't meant to say that telemedicine replaces in-person. In fact, quite the opposite. They really know that meeting with your healthcare providers and having that human relationship is important to health. But what they do, 98.6, is they take the undifferentiated intake form processing, the stuff that physicians really don't want to get bothered by doing, and they're using a chatbot right now which is successful at getting 50% of that intake form from that patient without the doctor having to get engaged at that kind of low-level type of an engagement. 98.6 has now 50 self-insured employers, and they're approaching over 160,000 patients. So the other beauty of these models is that they're scaling really, really fast. And of course, Science 37. Last year, I was a member of the Clinical Trials Transformation Initiative, which was a public-private partnership with Duke and the FDA. And I was stunned to hear, we've all known the patient experience isn't where it needs to be with clinical trials, but because we have patients have to go to remote sites, we're excluding so many patients from trials who really desperately need that medicine. And again, if you think about a day in the life of a patient, maybe somebody who's busy taking care of a family, maybe somebody who lives really far from that site, why are we putting so many barriers in their way to getting the interaction that they need so we can determine more quickly how medicines are working? Science 37 is fixing that by bringing clinical trials to the home, eliminating so many barriers to patients being able to raise their hand and participate. And then finally, Proteus is a company that I'm really excited about. I give a huge accolade to Otska to partnering with Proteus to create the first digital medicine for schizophrenia. Came out of a deep insight that care teams enable to really make sure those patients are being cared for. It's a really difficult disease state to treat, a lot of complex medication. If you can just have that one connective tissue between the patient and all of the healthcare providers taking care of them and make sure they're taking their meds appropriately, that makes a huge difference in their lives. And it was their caregivers and regulators that came to Otska and Proteus and asked them to do this. I was really excited to see earlier this year that now Proteus is moving to the immuno-oncology space, because that's a really good example, I should say oncology in general, because patients who are on chemotherapy, when they're not seeing their care team, they don't know if the symptoms they're experiencing are normal or not. So with Proteus, they're going to have instant data going to those care teams to keep right on top of those patients. You know, truly, if you had told us a few years ago these things would have been possible, we would have told you they're science fiction. But now we're really taking these experiences that weren't where they need to be and making them right. And I was so excited just a few weeks ago to see these new announcements. We have the first HIPAA-eligible Alexa healthcare skills out there. We've all been waiting a long time for this. And the 3 early use cases, again, you know, remember I was telling you about the new engagement is about natural language processing. Express Scripts makes it really easy for you to see where is my medication, where is it in the process, provides that transparency just by talking to Alexa. Cigna makes it really easy for you to understand what your benefits are at home or in the car, and also be able to make it easier to understand what those healthy rewards are to having better health. And then finally, Boston Children's Hospital. When children come home after a surgery, the parents and caregivers are able to provide Alexa with input for how that patient is coming along, how their child is doing, so their care team can respond faster if any issues do come up. So again, it's just the beginning of how we will be engaging differently. And it's also the beginning of, instead of us trying to adapt to computers, computers are adapting to us in a sense. So as we go a little bit broader, you may be saying to yourself, these are some really interesting use cases, but how important is it really? Although I know from your poll data that you are thinking about it, which is great. This is a wonderful survey that Salesforce did last year to 6,700 people around the globe, both businesses and consumers, to really get a better handle on what we mean by customer experience today. And in orange is the consumer, blue is business, and the number in the middle there is just the blended average. And here are some of the things that we're seeing. Customers are now defining the experience as the product or service. And 80% of them say that that experience is just as important as your product or service. Furthermore, if you do a good job, 95% of them are going to stay loyal to you. And doing a good job means you treat them as an individual and you're respectful of their data and you build that trust. However, even though you're doing that, you cannot rest on your laurels, because 67% of them are saying that they're still raising their standard for what good looks like. And for those of you who might have heard us talk about the virtuous flywheel at Amazon.com, we were founded on this nature of hedonic adaptation. Yesterday, having free shipping was a huge delight and surprise, and nowadays it's a price of entry. So even though you get there, you got to keep raising the bar, and you have to keep listening, and you have to keep changing. Because if you don't, the price is very, very high. So 76% of customers expect you to know who they are now. And half of them are saying that we're falling short of delivering that type of an experience. Half of them don't believe that companies don't have their best interests in heart. And half of them have stopped buying from a company because a competitor provided a better experience. So this is wonderful insight, because if you can invest and untap that energy you have around developing better patient experiences, you're going to be able to differentiate your medical system. You're going to be able to differentiate your molecules. You know, so many times, and you'll see this afternoon when we talk about this, so many times now we're seeing such power from the digital feedback loop to change behavior and have better outcomes, that if you have 2 life science companies with 2 similar molecules and one has this patient experience and the other doesn't, this will always return better patient outcomes no matter what. So a huge opportunity to differentiate and attract customers to what you're doing. Because the what customers are expecting now is really different. And I almost think that we should now have a new brand for CX and now call it MEX. Because MEX is saying that 84% of people expect you to treat them like a person, not a number. So they want you to know who they are and to be able to develop those experiences that they want. They want things to be connected. They want you to recognize how they're using your products or services, and they don't want to wait. So these help you understand, what are the hallmarks of what that good customer experience looks like today. Now, before you start looking at this and thinking, oh, this is probably a lot of the digital natives and this is skewing younger, this is across the board, and all generations are increasingly connected here. But why wouldn't they? Because isn't talking to Alexa a lot easier than trying to read an input into a mobile app and figuring that out? As our computers are becoming more human-like in their engagement, it makes sense that people are going to be flocking to these experiences because they're superior to what they did before. So this is not a digital native world. This is a connected world in which all people start to have the same expectations of what they want from you. So great news is you're already excited about trying to build something like this. And last year at reInvent, we decided to expose the engine that we use to surprise and delight customers to the world, and it's called AWS Pinpoint. Pinpoint is our digital user engagement capabilities, and I'm going to take you through that. But one of the things that we like to do is not just export our technology, but also export our culture. And this has elements I'm going to share with you, the framework of our culture of innovation. So how do we really arrive at those great customer experiences? Because really the first place to start, we always talk about start with the customer experience in mind and work backward from there. Alexa was born out of a really simple use case of if I'm cooking and my hands are kind of full of vegetables and stuff like that, they're not clean to be able to go and change the radio station. And we understood what the pain point was, and we started to build out skills from that. And that led to a whole wide range of applications. So what we tell our customers is start with that one pain point and start working backward from there about what would that user experience look like. I'll be honest with you, I have a lot of customers who say to me, I want an Alexa skill. But sometimes it can be a real analog approach solution that makes sense. So that's why we say understand where your patient or your customer is and what the pain point is. Then work backward to put together timely engagements seamlessly across the channels, and then send personalized messages that meet their needs in the moment. And there's a lot of implications for technology, right? Sub-second response, AI, ML models that are learning and responding differently all the time, security and compliance, all channels integrated. It seems like a lot of heavy lifting, especially if those of you have come from a direct marketing or a CRM type of world. And there's really 5 key pillars, and that all have to be orchestrated together to make this really, really sing. The first one is just reaching your audience. And again, it's not just email anymore. There's AR, VR, which is increasingly becoming more popular. I mentioned the car as another place to reach people. It truly is all channels, omni-channel, all the time. Identifying characteristics. It's not enough to have kind of a customer database. You have to constantly be watching behavior and inferring from that behavior on what your users need or want from you. Engaging at the right place and time. If people aren't opening your emails, just stop sending the email and figuring out what a plan B is. So again, being able to have this sentient type of overlay on top of how you engage with patients and customers is a really important thing. Personalized content. We'll talk about segmentation in a second, but the best segment is a segment of one. And any of you that have ever bought a product on Amazon will see this at work immediately when you start to get recommendations for things that are like that product, also streaming from your past behavior too. And then finally, measure effectiveness. I tell everybody, don't do anything without measuring, and don't measure anything without doing anything. So constantly being able to determine where is that user experience, and is it where we need it to be based on data. Because really there are 3 stages of user engagement that I think we've all lived through, and some of us still kind of go through. I think the first stage is behind us in terms of pushing email and messages. A lot of us are in this place where we have some a priori segments that we've determined, right? I want to be able to maybe go after busy moms with children, or maybe older patients on multiple medications. But really where we want to get is in dynamic, on-the-fly, real-time segmentation. So AWS Pinpoint has been undercover and wraps for a while, kind of running under Amazon, and it's gone through these stages. And now by integrating machine learning with it, it helps do that dynamic on-the-fly segmentation that you might have experienced as an Amazon customer. So let me take you through a little bit, walk through what this means. So here's a little bit more of Pinpoint. Below are the components that make up the engagement platform. And above are examples of channels where you could have an experience today as a customer. If any of you have gone into an Amazon bookstore, it's like no other bookstore. They don't group books by subject matter necessarily, but they have pretty cool subjects like, hey, books that people have read cover to cover in less than 24 hours, which is my favorite place to go. You don't need to go to a cashier. I can go up, pull out my phone, I've got my Prime app, I scan the QR code, I can buy it and walk out with it right then and there. Say my husband, who's also attached to my Amazon account, has gone into a bookstore and bought something, and I see it pop up on my mobile app. I can ask Alexa, Alexa, what was just bought at the bookstore? And Alexa will tell me what that is. But say I bought a book on David Bowie, and I go home that day and I pull up Amazon Prime, I'm going to start to see recommendations for David Bowie documentaries or movies. When I go onto my Amazon.com experience, it's going to have recommendations for other things that are adjacent to David Bowie, maybe music that I might be interested in, maybe even the Rolling Stones. So this is just a really simple example of under the covers, Pinpoint and Personalize is taking that information in and changing your experience by the moment for millions and millions of customers around the globe. Now, we have a lot of customers beyond Amazon who've been using Pinpoint for quite some time. So if you use Netflix or Hulu and you receive those recommendations Friday night for movies to watch, that's coming from Pinpoint. Some of the other use cases I think that come a little closer to home for the audience here are with Agiro. Agiro is actually a whitelisted roadside assistance company that's behind Volkswagen and Audi and Ford. And they have sensors in the car that if you do get into an unfortunate accident, immediately it triggers a message, a sub-second response time out to emergency responders to get to you as quickly as possible. I think another adjacent use case is with Coinbase. Coinbase is a cryptocurrency company that helps to clear trades. So they have to be able to, again, respond in sub-second confirmations that that trade has gone through. But we're really excited a couple of months ago that our first online pharmacy use case, MedLife, was publicly announced on Pinpoint. For those of you that don't know it, MedLife is the second largest pharmacy in the entire world. They're based in India, so outside of China, I should say, they're the second largest pharmacy in the entire world, and they're doing all their communications using Pinpoint. And in India, what they have are bicycles, so they're outfitted with GPS sensors, and when they're 30 minutes away from your home to deliver your medication, you get a notification. After you receive it, another confirmation that you received it. Refills are being prepared, you get advance notification that it's coming and it's going to be delivered to you. So again, they're really bringing it to the home, the person is the place, and using Personalize to make sure that all the seams are being knit together so you have a seamless engagement. So let's just go a little bit deeper onto now what really sits under the covers of Pinpoint. And the product team likes to joke that really the thing that we did here is we put a UI interface over all of these great AWS tools and services that over time we've been adding onto as customer experiences have changed so that people get access to all of these capabilities under the hood of one experience. But I have to tell you, this is not a replacement for content management systems. This is not a replacement for CRM. There are companies like Marketo and Salesforce who do that really, really well today. What this is an orchestration layer that sits on top of all of that and allows you to bring in the data, the history, the information that you have, and act on it a lot faster in a completely channel agnostic way. In a sense, Pinpoint is a platform for a user engagement today that kind of doesn't exist in any one solution. And that's why we've kind of built in and exposed it this way out to folks like yourself to help you get started really quickly. So how quickly? Well, the thing that really makes Pinpoint sing is this idea of personalize. Amazon Personalize is a series, like a series of recipes that are artificial intelligence and machine learning models that have everything in there from sentiment analysis to next best action, and they can be pulled out of the box and customized for what you're trying to do. So recently we worked with a large insurance company that wanted to be able to personalize the experience of customers who are searching for new home or auto policies. Our team was able to work with them and in 48 hours be able to implement this and have a new experience. A very large pizza chain also reached out to us to do something similar. Again, in less than 48 hours, we were able to work with them and create a new experience. Now, I'm not talking about a POC. I'm talking about moving into full production, which is pretty amazing when you think about it, because that's how easy it is to implement these tools. And again, I just want to make sure that everybody understands this is not a standalone one-channel engagement. This is being able to marry a number of things together. So for those of you who invested in call centers, we have AWS Connect that makes it really easy to be able to have a state-of-the-art call center engagement. And this puts on top of it chatbots like Lex that can handle a lot of the front-end engagement. With things like Personalize, we can actually do sentiment analysis real time and see if we have patients maybe who are in distress, who need to be able to reach somebody more qualified very quickly. It's really pretty cool how all these things work together, and then how machine learning is not kept separately. How many of us have built the machine learning models over here and then we put them into production at some point? It's real time, developing, training, tuning, watching, training, tuning, because the one thing that we can really count on is that customer experience is going to continue to change. So not only is it incumbent on us to give customers what they want today, but be a couple steps ahead of them and have insight into where they're going next. So I thought this was pretty interesting when I asked the Pinpoint team, okay, we're going to be speaking to this really wonderful group of over 400 people at this symposium. How do they get started? And they said, basically email them at this address, pinpointbizdev@amazon.com. And I said, are you sure you want to do this? It's a big audience. And they said, look, they actually spun up the insurance company I mentioned and the pizza company even faster than 48 hours. There are some assumptions there. You have some data. I know that was a challenge for some of the folks. But even still, they're able to work with you to kind of figure it out. But that's how fast it can be to start to build a state-of-the-art customer experience. It's kind of like how Amazon would do it. And I really loved what Ryan was talking about earlier in terms of how he's been able to shrink his time frames in terms of model development. More and more what we're trying to do is understand how our technology can help reduce that time frame and put it right in the box with things like Personalize and SageMaker, which is a really another great example of a managed service. So I hope you take that team up on their offer, because I'd love to see how they do. And there are really two ways that they can help you. Again, the first one is the idea of a quick start that can be, 48 hours to kind of come up with some ideas of how machine learning can help you, but 30 days or less to help you actually put in a more comprehensive plan if you need that type of plan. And then they also have Pinpoint plus Ignite. As I mentioned to you, not only do we want to export our technology, but we want to export our culture of innovation as well. So we work with a lot of business leaders to help understand what their transformation objectives are and help reduce the time it takes for them to reach it, both in terms of people, process, and technology. So I hope this information was helpful to you, and that this morning you see a common thread about how we're trying to use technology to help really change experiences around the globe in a way that helps our patients achieve better outcomes at lower costs.